I was one of the first stewards of the PSM course. Stephanie Ockerman and I were invited by Ken Schwaber to look after the PSM once Gunther Verheyen moved on, and they needed people to look after the courses. And the accountabilities were broad, and the stakeholders, there were really three different groups. The first group of stakeholders, well, Ken is the primary one. So at that point, it was very early on in the whole steward initiative, and the PSM course is very, very close to Ken because it's the one that he wrote way back when, and you can trace the provenance to the Scrum Master course that he trained when he created the Scrum Alliance. Because Ken Schwaber created the Scrum Alliance, and then he went on to create Scrum.org. So he started both of the Scrum certifying bodies. So Ken, very keen stakeholder, where there was major version changes, they were reviewed by Ken, and we had to discuss what we're doing and manage his expectations and make sure we're aligned with his vision of where he wanted Scrum.org to go and the understanding the intent of where we want to take the course. The second group of stakeholders is the professional Scrum trainer community who are delivering the training. And the third group of stakeholders were all the people who were beneficiaries of the training, the customers, the clients, ultimately. Now, with being a steward, there's two aspects to it. There was the maintenance aspect, just fixing, changes, tweaking things, just from feedback. But there was also thinking about the strategic direction of the course. When we started as stewards, there was a lot of content. There was more content in it than there is now. Since I rolled off the steward program, there hasn't been a substantive change in the structure of the content since I rolled off. And that aspect of thought leadership is something I think Stephanie and I did well. We argued pretty well over every word on every slide. A big thing, I am a huge fan of the Oxford comma. Whenever you're doing a list and before the and, you put a comma. Stephanie, not so much. And it was then that I realized internationally that you have to publish in the language of the organization you're working with. So being Australian, I like British English. The irony is that you have to put a definition on English, and you'll see that there are flavors of English, right? Because each different dialect has got its ways of spelling, etc. So for me, accepting Zs where there should be S's, trivial but small. It tickled my attention to detail. But we made sure that there was imperial and metric measurements, things like that. So just making sure it was consistent, aligning with the other stewards so that there is consistency of message, and really shaping out how things worked and making sure that the course stayed in line when the Scrum Guide was updated, of course. So even though there's been evolutions of the Scrum Guide, the core tenets are still the same. That reliance on Scrum values, the focus of empiricism, and calling out what are now the accountabilities, previously known as roles, the artifacts, and the commitments coming into first place in the 2020 guide, and the events. So bringing that all together is really important. It mattered to me because I cared deeply about people understanding Scrum. Not in a dogmatic way. I think blindly implementing any process, even if it's the most awesome process in the world, blindly implementing it isn't going to get you the step change you're looking for. And what we're looking to do in the PSM is to help people realize that you must found your direction, your purpose. It needs to be founded and grounded in the Scrum values, building on empiricism. Now, after that, if you implement Scrum on those foundations, it's going to be healthy or professional Scrum. Without that foundation of the Scrum values, it is mechanical or robotic. Some people call it zombie Scrum. So it mattered to me to help craft a truly powerful learning experience that would help people who haven't seen it, or even if they've been using Scrum, to see it with a fresh perspective, to make it richer and deeper so that they can become more effective as true leaders that serve to help their teams and their organizations reap the value that Scrum can deliver. So it's lots of things that helped me stay true to it. And so also being the steward, it gave me that freedom to run experiments in the class, which I would discuss with Stephanie, and we'd agree measurements and approaches to it. So, sometimes we'd run things, and being an experiment, they didn't always return the results that we expected, but, there was learning. That's cool. And that helped Stephanie and I forge that foundational understanding and that perspective that we would want to see people new to Scrum, or people who perhaps needed to true up, reconnect with the Scrum Guide to ensure that they were founded in the Scrum values and they were comfortable with using empiricism, being kind to people and ruthless on value. I think that's a key thing. It really helped me as a PST because it forced me to challenge the angle that it was coming from. And there were many discussions with other PSTs about what went in, what didn't. And it was probably one of the tougher product owner experience you have, because one of the wonderful qualifying criteria of PSTs is every PST cares exceptionally passionately about Scrum and helping build the best possible learning experience for their students. So you get into some very detailed discussions, arguments about stance, nuances, direction, and being able to be clear on what is canon, the Scrum Guide, and what is personal subjective interpretation, which is healthy but not canon. And helping me articulate very clearly what was my perspective as opposed to Scrum Guide, I found to be very much a healthy forging of my ability to communicate. Another huge bonus is when I was a steward, I was invited by scrum.org to run a number of train the trainers. I think I've run quite a few of those over the years. And that helped me grow the PST community, which I think is wonderful, because the more people who understand Scrum accurately will help more people use Scrum professionally.